silence, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just want to put this out there. I forgot my old lady glasses, so I'm trying to, I got this stuff zoomed. I got some old lady glasses. Oh, look at your little, throwing them out there. Thank you. Okay, I need approval of the agenda, please.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have no public comments. No correspondence to the board. But we do have recognitions tonight.
So tonight we've asked our area business council to come and for us to recognize them before the board. Our area business council does so much for the school, just the partnership within the community. Any fundraisers that we have, they're the first ones that we go out and they're used with welcoming arms to support us financially. They support us within the community and everything that we do. They also help to set up the area block party for us when we set that up for the students before school. And they donate, give to that. They give their time for that. And Mrs. Messner has come this evening. She owns Show Me. What is it? Dust Bunnies. Sorry, I just couldn't think of that right. And she is the president of the Area Business Council. And she has come in representation of them. So we wanted to honor them tonight, tell them thank you for the partnership that we have with you and the Area Business Council. It truly is appreciated from the school, from our students, from our teachers and staff who are here tonight, and all that you do. So let's give them a big round of applause. We also have a blessing because we have an area business council member that also sits on our board. So Paul Berge, and we'll all come up and congratulate him and get the picture as well. Thank you.
All right, can't wait. Mr. Jester in the back. Just stay the There you go. Okay. All right. Right here on 3. 1, 2. Thank you. Looks good. Okay, we we have our reports and presentations, and we have our audit presentation.
All right, we have Brian Eckworth here from Westbrook and Associates to go over our fiscal audit for year ending June 30, 2017. Welcome, thanks for coming in and getting us through another audit this year.
As Dr. Wheeler said, I'm Brian Eckhoff with Western Company. I'm one of the partners with the firm. We completed your audit field work about 3 weeks ago, and we're going to do a brief overview of the audited financial statements and recommendations. Page 2 of the auditor's report will be the page that you're actually most concerned with, and that is where the opinion is stated. And you'll see at the top of the page that it says the financial statements were presented fairly. This would be a good report or a clean opinion in all the auditing terms. The next several pages, pages 3 through 10, is the management discussion and analysis. This is where Dr. Wheeler gets to talk about the financial statements, things that are happening within the district. It is also the only section in the financial statements that you will see comparative data. It's great information, but we'll skip over it and go straight to the financial statements. Page 11 is your statement of activities. It's kind of a different financial statement because your expenditures go down the left-hand side, and then it's offset by certain revenues across the middle to show the net cost of service down the right-hand side. The two things that we like to highlight are food service and community services, because we like our districts to at least be close to break even on food service, and then know how they're faring on community services, which is your preschool and before and after school care. So you'll see on both of those, you lost a little bit of money on each one, losing about $18,000 on food service and around $35,000 on community services. The next page is your balance sheet. You'll see that you have approximately $10 million that's sitting in cash and cash equivalents. In the footnotes, you'll see the allocation of the fund balances. They are made up of $7,800 worth of professional development. This is your required 1% of basic formula that must be spent on professional development. That's the carryover that was required to be spent this year, excuse me. In the general fund, you also have approximately $45,000 of student activities. These are the balances that are in your student activity clubs as of the end of the year. And then in your general fund, you have about $5.9 million unassigned that is just for general purposes. And then your entire balance in your capital projects is assigned for capital projects. Page 13 is the statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance. You'll see at the bottom of the page, the change in fund balance was a decrease in fund balance of about 1.1, almost 1.2 million. The reason for that is due to the timing of the impact aid payment. It actually came in July, so it's really due to a timing issue on the impact aid of the reason for showing the significant decrease in the change in fund balance. Page 19 in the footnotes shows your lease participation certificates. This is your debt that you have right now. You'll see that there's about 4.3 million outstanding on that. And then on the next page, it shows all of your standard payments, no balloon payments or anything of that sort, just your standard payments. Page 29 is a schedule of revenues by the last 5 years to show the comparatives. And you'll see that the change in state and federal this year compared to the last several years, where federal kind of spiked last year, and then this year it went back down to 30%. That is due to that impact aid money coming in. And also your local revenue is going up due to the increase in assessed valuation.
So is the decrease the impact because of the timing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Page 30 is your schedule of expenditures for the last 5 years, and you can see that overall, basically your percentage-wise has remained the same over the last 3 years. However, you did experience an increase this year in expenditures due to salaries and benefit increases, as well as some purchase services increases. 31 shows the trends for the last 5 years for reserve ratio, as well as your average daily attendance. You'll see your reserve ratio this year. If you look at the chart, it looks like it went down significantly. The impact aid payment, if the impact aid payment was included in there, that would look much better. And then your average daily attendance this year came in at just under 1,500.
Can you go back?
Yes.
You said expenditures went up, but it's showing 77. Is that backwards?
No, in total, expenditures went up, but overall, your salaries and employee benefits as a percentage of total went down, and that's due to an increase in purchase services and an increase in capital outlay. So if you look up here at the top, 2017, your expenditures were about 16.6 million. 2016, your expenditures were about 15.1 million. But you'll see that your salaries went up about 500,000 between the 2 years, and then employee benefits went up 400,000. Now, as a percentage of total is how the chart shows it. And then the chart does not include capital outlay for function 4,000.
So the capital outlay is.
That is just your, anything in Fund 4 not in function code 4,000, which is your facility improvements. So any instructional equipment, things like that will still be included in the capital outlay there, but any building improvements will not be included.
So the building improvements are included because they're a different fund.
They aren't included in the graph because we don't want the graph to be skewed for a 1 year, hey, we did $2 million worth of improvements on our building. So we don't put them in the graph so that your graph doesn't get skewed for a 1 year instance. They are included in the expenditures at the top of the page. However, they are not included in the graph. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because it could be just one-time deal.
Right. Yeah. For comparative purposes, we like the chart to show the 5 years not including the building expenditures. Any other questions on those? We are also required to look at state statutes and Missouri laws and bring anything to your attention if there are violations of those. And you'll see on page 36, it says they are fairly stated in material respects. This means another clean opinion or no state findings, which on page 37, you'll see that it says none. There are no state findings this year. Page 38, during the audit, we are required to look at internal control. We do not give an opinion on internal control, but if there's anything that we see during our audit in internal control that we feel needs to be brought to the board's attention, this is where we report it. And you'll see we have one instance, 2017-001. This is similar to last year and similar in a lot of districts your size. It's regarding the segregation of duties issue. With the district the size that it is, basically Katy does everything, the majority of everything, and has the ability to do everything, which is standard for your size district. So this comment is to let you know that you need to be putting monitoring, mitigating controls in place to monitor the activity to ensure segregation of duties on anything that you can. Reviewing bank statements monthly, looking through expenditures at the board meeting, things like that.
So have you given us recommendations for that?
Yes.
That's true.
You have over 750,000 of federal expenditures, so you are a single audit. So we are required to do an additional report and additional work for those. It's required by OMB Circular A133, and you'll see we did not identify any deficiencies on page 40 and 41 is that report. This is the summary of the federal findings. You'll see that the one material weakness is noted due to that segregation of duties. And then at the bottom, it says, did you qualify as a low-risk auditee? And it says no. This doesn't necessarily mean you're a high-risk auditee. The reason you did not qualify as a low-risk auditee is because you are cash basis. 99.9% of schools in the state of Missouri are cash basis. The way OMB Circular A133 is written, if you're cash basis, you cannot qualify as a low-risk auditee. So we're required to do additional auditing work because of that. So don't let that jump out as you are high risk, because that's not the case. Does that make sense?
For now.
Also in your packet was a report to administration. It is 3 pages stapled together. This is where we bring immaterial instances, things that we like to bring to your attention that are maybe coming down from DESE or things we noted during the audit. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. The first one being employee reimbursements. My experience with other districts, so I started asking all of my districts, is there's no reconciliation of who's assigned to go to various activities to who submits for mileage reimbursement. So we're saying you should do some sort of reconciliation between your activities directors, who is assigned to that duty, to who is actually receiving reimbursement for the mileage. Not this district, but another district I had an instance where I had 5 administrators receiving mileage for the same activity. So I'm trying to keep that from happening in all of my districts. So some sort of reconciliation between those two.
So can we go back to that one?
Yeah.
Last year, there was a similar, I'm talking about mileage and things. Has anything, did you review that?
Yes. And
So,
everything's been implemented for that, so we're fine on that. This is a new recommendation for a different, basically a different opinion on the mileage.
That'll make it better.
Yes, which anything in last year's report, we go through and look at and make sure it's been updated and corrected, or that you've done some sort of implementation to fix it. And if it's not fixed, you'll see it show up on the report again. If not, it's taken out of the report. So this is a new comment on something I noticed in another district, and then all of my districts I've gone to, they've all told me, we don't reconcile mileage reimbursements to activity, spreadsheets for who's assigned to it. So then they got me thinking, hey, we need to be doing that. Another one, both of these, student data governance, DESE did 5 audits this year where they went out and they actually went to the school district and tried to get into your network and steal kids' identities, basically is what they did. So this comment is, go out to the state auditor's website, download the audit. There were 5 of them. They all received the same thing. They all 5 failed. They all 5 received the same recommendations. And see if there's anywhere you can improve on your IT side to protect the kids. Because most districts are worried about keeping the kids from getting to things they shouldn't. DESE took the other stance and tried to get into the kids. The account code structure changes. DESE is implementing a new account code structure. I just sat through a webinar Tuesday, and all of the questions were responded with, wait for future guidance. So DESE doesn't actually even know how they're going to implement this, but just know that whenever Dr. Wheeler and Katie bring their budget to you this year, it's going to have a whole new account code structure. They're adding 3 new sections to it, being location, source of funds, and project, that will be in the middle of your account code structure. And DESE's working with the majority of the software providers to crosswalk this year's information so that you can have comparative data. Some softwares are having better luck than others, but just know you'll have a whole new account code structure on this year's budget for your 18-19 year. Any questions overall?
there's some that you didn't go over.
Yeah, I didn't want to hit every single one. So if you have questions, I'll be glad to.
I do on the budget. It shows that you do not recommend rolling over to actions.
Dr. Wheeler and I kind of talked about that. So best business practice is the reason for a budget is so that you can plan. And if you amend your budget to actual, you lose that planning ability. So best business practice is you leave your budget, you amend it how you should to, meet state statutes, but you don't amend it to actual, because then you lose your ability to look back at it and say, oh yeah, we overshot basic formula by 200,000. How do we do our calculation? What do we need to do? Things like that.
So what, we've done that in the past, or is your plan to continue to do that, or what?
So we talked about this, and I think I've talked about this every year I've been a superintendent, because it always comes up. So I think what I will do this year is I will make a recommendation that we amend the budget to meet the requirements of state statute.
Yeah. That, in all honesty,
which
the
basically
reason-
says that your revenues and expenditures must be actual.
Yeah. The reason to amend the actual is to meet the state statute requirements, because it's kind of a double-edged sword.
So what's the difference? I guess I'm failing to see the difference.
If you amend the actual, everything's exactly how it is. And what he would present would be basically be we're gonna amend the budget so that our expenditures are higher enough to cover what the expenditures are. So it wouldn't be an actual true amend to actual. It would be a amend anything where we overspent in a specific function to get up to where we meet that amount.
Or underspend.
Or underspend.
The reason for that being is unforeseen expenditures throughout a school year could be astronomical in some areas. Of course, they could go down in some areas.
Right.
So, but you can't see into the future whether or not you're gonna spend $175,000 on rooftop air conditioning units or something else that are unbudgeted for. I mean, you do have a budget for those areas,
Right.
but they could be above and beyond.
Right. But see,
So that's why you say amend to actual to meet state standards when you actually had to spend that money, even though you didn't budget for it.
correct,
But you may have saved money in other areas that you didn't budget for either.
correct. Yeah. A budgeting tool doesn't necessarily approve the expenditures. You guys approve the expenditures every month whenever you go through the agenda, approve all the expenditures. The budget side is how the state statute says you approve the expenditures. So even though you may approve the expenditures at the board meeting, state statute says that you have to have a budget that also approves those expenditures.
That's why, yeah, that's why.
Mhm.
So to explain that a little bit differently, I guess. So if we have a budget line item that budgeted 10,000, spent 15,000, it's going to amend to 15.
Mhm. That's what you did this year.
Okay. Oh, that's what we did. So how would that, this year, at the end of this year, how would that look?
When you do it this year, how are you gonna handle it?
I'm trying to understand the difference. The way I heard it explained, we're going to actual expenditures. Seems like the same thing.
Yes.
Well, here.
We're just calling it something different.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the questions I have is, okay, when you do your budget, if you can't actually foresee the future of expenditures, but what do you do in a situation where you didn't hit the mark on any specific area of the budget, but you grossly overspent through maybe wasteful spending? What do you do in a situation like that?
One of two things. Either amend your budget to say, hey, we grossly overspent and I need to meet state statutes, so we're going to amend our budget to meet state statutes. Or the other option is you say, no, we're not going to. I want proof that we did do this, and you leave it, and then there's just a state finding that says you overspent in whatever fund by X dollars.
Well, and what I'm getting at is I'm sure there are some districts out there throughout the state or throughout the country where you have a superintendent or assistant superintendent or maybe administrative side or anybody else for that reason that just spend. And what do you do? What do you do if you have a superintendent that's a spendaholic that throws that budget plumb out the window after the board votes on it?
No, that's, if the board approves the budget, that's what the budget is, no matter what the superintendent does. So I do one of those two things, either the board agrees with the superintendent's spending and amends their budget and approves a new budget, or when I come in, I report to the board and say, the budget you approved was 6 million, but Dr. Wheeler decided you want to spend 12.
Well, there's another side of this too. It's the function is to allow us to close our books through board action to accurately reflect the actual revenues and expenditures. So it could be an over expenditure. And as you guys know, as a board, we run payroll for June, July, and August in June, along with benefits. But it also could be, hey, we get a revenue payment on June 30 of impact date that comes in this year instead of in August, and we reflect that as well. So the function is to allow through board action for our actual revenues and expenditures to be finalized and approved so we can wrap up the books. But frankly, the books don't, we make that motion and we still work through, past June 30 to go ahead and reconcile and close out the year and start the new. So it's a procedure. It isn't necessarily recommended by auditors, but it certainly is a very, very commonly used practice. It's one we've talked about, and it's one that probably most superintendents talk about with their auditors, just like segregation of duty. So we're not talking about anything that's not a very, very common practice.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, I know that this has happened to other districts in the past. And as an opportunity to learn with you standing here in this room, now's the time for me to ask a question, hey, what if?
Right.
You know, what happens?
Yeah.
When you leave here, there won't be anybody else that can answer that for me except maybe somebody within this district.
Right. And if Dr. Wheeler decides, he goes on a spending spree and the board only approves a certain amount, not throwing Dr. Wheeler under the bus, don't take it that way or anything. It would be in the state findings as, hey, as a board, you approved 6 million of expenditures, but when we came in, this is what it was. So that's how you would know, hey, we've got something going on here, what's going on.
Well, at the end of the day, it's the board's responsibility to keep everybody in check, including themselves.
Right. And I think your question earlier, he's gonna do it on the expenditure side, not necessarily so the way it was done this year, it was revenues and expenditures, all across the board. I think the way we talked about it, you would go through the expenditures, cover yourself on expenditures so you didn't overspend, but we'd leave the revenues the same, so you're not taking the full amend to actual approach. You're doing it on the expenditure side, but you're not doing it on the revenue side.
So expenditures would, whatever we spent would become budget,
Yes,
whether we were under or over.
yes.
So let's back up here just a second. So you said amend the budget to follow state standards. What happens if you don't follow state standards?
Save money.
It's a dollar over, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's $1.
it's $1. So if you can, the normal deal is shoot your revenues low, shoot your expenditures high. That way you come in under budget. So if I come in and you budget 7,000 for expenditures in general fund and you spend 7,000 on one, I'm supposed to put a state finding on there for $1.
So what you're
It's kind
saying,
of funny
you
to
want-
me, but it's a violation of the state code that says you cannot spend money unless you approve the budget that says you can spend the money.
what you're saying, Brian, the norm is shoot your revenues low and your expenditures high. That's just the way it's supposed to be done.
Now, on the budget, you underestimate your revenues and you overestimate your expenditures on the budget. That way, whenever your expenditures come in, you come in under budget on expenditures and you meet state statute.
So, in other words, superintendents go through the process to artificially inflate the budget expenditures, and they artificially underinflate revenues to cover their behind. Or you can take a best faith estimate and try to say, I think this is where this is going to come out, and in June we amend to actuals to meet state requirement.
Yeah.
And keep us from getting a finding.
Yeah, because there's nothing in the budget. So for example, you can have a budget where you estimate $10 million worth of expenditures and only spend 1 million. You're still within the state requirements.
Yeah, but then at the end of your fiscal year, your superintendent looks like a rock star because he came in way under budget.
Right. Yes.
That's our point.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's kind of a double-edged sword with the way the state statute's written and what we recommend best business. Him and I had the discussion on this. It's just a best business. It's not necessarily something you have to do. I'm fine with the amending to actual. I'm just saying best business, projections, things like that. Look at it that side.
And that's just really
What the,
part of the deal.
Yes.
but the idea of formulating a budget and sticking with that budget through each line item is virtually impossible
Yes.
throughout the year.
Yeah, because you don't know if an air conditioner is going to go down middle of the year, or if, somebody's going to drive through your building, or, there's all kinds of things that can happen, but you don't have any idea what will happen.
Or the revenues.
Yeah, or if the state decides that it cut funding.
More questions?
Well,
vote on
okay,
it,
so
Paul.
we talked about the cost of a possible air conditioner or something. Does our insurance cover the buildings too? I mean, so say
Yes.
we have a catastrophic loss in a specific building through an explosion or something, and the insurance company's gonna put the bill for it, not the budget.
Correct.
Okay, that's the question.
To the extent that the policy covers it, yes.
I had one more. There were several that were almost verbatim from last year.
Okay.
Is that typical?
Sometimes, yes and no. We like to see, improvements as we go, so if I have some schools where I've had the same comment 6 years ago. If I come in here next year and I've got the same comment from 2 years ago, I'll say, hey, we really need to focus on this one, and work on getting this improved, depending upon how big of an item it is. If it's just a little item of, hey, we really need to just look at our mileage, it's your opinion on how you want to spend the money. If it's a big deal where I think you guys can save $30,000 or $40,000, I shouldn't say we really need to look into this.
So how do we as a board address that? When most of what you've written up here, we don't directly address in meetings.
One of the things where this year's kind of changed a little bit with corrective action plans and things like that. I would expect, maybe a couple times a year, you just ask, hey, how's our corrective action plan towards our audit recommendations? It's something that Dr. Wheeler and Katie will have to go through and say, hey, this is what our recommendations were. This is how we think we should, make changes and implement things. And then as a board, you can decide, yeah, that'd be a great way to do it. Or as a board, I've also had boards come to me and say, I appreciate your comment, but we're not doing it. Everything in here in that report is, my opinion, your opinion, different opinions. So as a board, you kind of decide, hey, is this something we want to focus on or not? And then Dr. Wheeler and Katie can go through and make a corrective action plan and implement the correct policies and procedures to make it correction. Just a quick comment. Katie does an amazing job. We're very impressed with everything she does. If she wasn't sitting there, I'd still tell you that, even if she was gone. So overall, a good audit, a good report. Don't let any of these recommendations jump out as a bad thing. One of the things we pride on is going into districts and, as they will tell you, the nitpicking things. It's nice to go in and, work a district through several years and make improvements as you go and kind of nitpick little items to make them better and better. So it's a pleasure coming and we enjoy it.
All right, are there any more comments or questions?
The only thing I wanted to throw in on that reserve balances in Fund 1, the unrestricted reserves. I know the board has heard this many times, but just for the record, we had that late impact aid payment that didn't come in until this fiscal year. So that artificially deflated our revenues last year, and they're going to artificially inflate our revenues this year. And then the second piece that I know you guys are aware of is the strategic shift of the reserve balances out of Fund 1 into Fund 4. So all of that was included in the budget that was presented to the board, and it's been duly discussed. But since we're at audit time, I wanted to mention that again, because at first look, it looks like we're significantly less in our reserve balances, and that's just not the case. So
Just do a timing deal.
timing and placement of where we're holding those funds.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whiteman report. You're not Colonel Green.
No, I'm not. So I'm here again, representing Colonel Goody. Of course, tonight, the Grace Community Council is putting on a evening social versus the normal lunch event. So that's where he's at, that's fine. But I enjoyed it.
And we like it.
So Last week, the wing successfully completed another global thunder exercise. That is a U.S. STRATCOM exercise that we do every year with conjunction of all kinds of forces around. So it's a big exercise, one of our big ones. And we did pretty much. And we got one other thing, and that's during, if you happen to be going out at the base between November 9th and November 13th, use the Spirit Gate. What we're trying to do now over long weekends we overwork our security forces. All there is to it. And we're trying to give those guys a little bit of a break. So if we shut down gates during those periods that we don't need, we can take care of some of our folks a little bit. So we're trying to take care of that off. That's all I got for right now.
All right, thank you. And we'll take you to. It's gonna be great. All right, principal and directors reports we have on there. Any questions on those? Comments? MSBA report, please.
So there's something that's a little entertaining at the front of this, so go ahead and tune in.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the MSBA Board Report for the month of November. I'm Stone Phillips, and thanks for the opportunity to share.
So that's quite enough. Thanks very much. Okay, thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MSBA Board Report for the month of November. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the 2017 MSBA Annual Conference. More than 1,200 school board members and administrators from school districts throughout the state attended this year's annual conference held last month. The conference featured more than 130 breakout sessions on a wide range of topics designed to improve the leadership skills of board members and administrators. General session speaker Steve Constantino, the author of several books on family engagement, challenged those at the conference to involve all families in their children's education. He said that can be accomplished only after earning their trust. And you can't demand trust. You can't legislate trust. You can't write policy your way to trust. The only way that you can get to trust that I know of is to earn it. My work is to build the capacity of schools to accept and value the fact that some of the best teachers we have are now on our payroll. And if we can harness that, great things will happen. Another general session speaker was former NBC and ABC News reporter and anchor Stone Phillips, a graduate of Parkway West High School in St. Louis County. We saw him earlier as he attempted to anchor the opening of this program. He remembered a high school English teacher who taught him not just to write, but also to think critically.
You know, she had a favorite phrase. It was the uncomfortable middle. The uncomfortable middle. That's where she wanted us to be in our thinking. No more black and white, simplistic, childlike thinking. We were no longer kids. She wanted to expand our minds and have us embrace complexity, look for truth and the answers to her essay questions in the rich, beautiful, gray areas of human understanding.
The MSBA presented Phillips with its Outstanding Missouri Public School Graduate Award following his remarks. Annual conference attendees also had the opportunity to hear from Natalie Hammond, the only adult survivor of the Sandy Hook tragedy that occurred in December of 2012. She shared her story of resilience in the aftermath of that elementary school shooting. She said it's critical that school leaders establish strong relationships before an incident occurs.
So having that communication, having that relationship where you know your law enforcement, oftentimes by first name, and they know you,
They know the procedure, they know your safety plan. They're able to come in and do lockdowns with you during a given school day. Someone yesterday said, you do the lockdowns while your kids are there? I said, absolutely, why would I not? They have to know how to do it as well. And the cops come in and they do it just like they would normally do. They knock on the door, they identify themselves, they open up the door. Nice job, and then they commend them. Again, we're talking 3 to 10-year-olds in my building. So they are little people. So we talk to them about nice job, way to keep quiet. Okay, you'll listen for the announcement when Mrs. Hammond gets on and lets you know that you're done. But that's part of the process, and it's a relationship that we've built together.
Governor Eric Greitens has made his 4th appointment to the 8-member State Board of Education. The latest appointment is Tim Sumners of Joplin, who has worked as a church pastor and chaplain. The appointment comes following a statement by former appointee Melissa Gelner of Springfield, who says her appointment was withdrawn by the governor's office after she refused to vote immediately to remove current Commissioner of Education Margie Van Dieven and replace her with a candidate favored by the governor. 2 new members of the State Board of Education say they were not pressured by the governor's office to fire Van Dieven. Eddie Justice of Poplar Bluff and Doug Russell of Lebanon made those comments during the annual dialogue with the State Board of Education at the recent annual conference. All 4 new appointees to the State Board of Education are subject to Senate confirmation when the Senate reconvenes in January. A highlight of this year's annual conference was the Student Showcase, where students from 13 school districts were on hand to present and discuss innovative programs in their school districts, such as a robotics program from McDonald County, an augmented reality demonstration from Columbia, and a woodshop and furniture design program from Rolla. The MSBA Delegate Assembly met during the annual conference and approved the association's new advocacy positions document that consolidates 3 previous documents that contain MSBA position statements on issues related to public education. This new document will provide the basis for MSBA's advocacy efforts during the 2018 session of the Missouri General Assembly, as well as on the federal level. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
All right, thank you for some of those chuckles there. Superintendent report, please.
So we'll start out with some congratulations, first of all, to our football team. We're certainly excited about their recent success, landing in the first district championship, I guess, since 1994 is what I was told. So exciting about that, as well as softball having their first ever district championship, following up our baseball first ever district championship late last spring, early summer. So a couple of things here. We have about 6 instructional days left until Thanksgiving break, which is kind of scary for the teachers out there and for us, and 21 instructional days left until Christmas break. So we talked in our admin meeting earlier this week about reminding teachers to use this time to the best of our abilities. We do squeeze in some fun with parties and celebrations, but certainly it's good quality scheduled time that typically goes uninterrupted. Once we come back from the break, we know that weather can be a factor and can kind of throw in some unexpected distractions. So looking forward to finishing out the calendar year very strong. We will celebrate Veterans Day activities in all buildings tomorrow, and if you have not made plans to attend, you're certainly welcome to do so. If it fits into your schedule, we have breakfasts and other recognition scheduled throughout the day. With our audit now finalized, I want to again mimic what we said, just express my appreciation to Ms. Huntsman, Ms. Frieden, Ms. Palmer, and Mr. Therian for their quality work over fiscal year 17. We will use the feedback from the audit to continuously improve the job that we do. A significant portion of our focus since last meeting was to analyze and critique our annual performance reports. We are overall very pleased with the outcome of our APR, but we also recognize several key areas where we can improve, and we've already started strategically planning for those areas. I do want to also thank Mr. Coron for his extra time to look through and disaggregate our data along with our building principals. and try to help identify strategies where we can improve. As said last year, the APR is just one indicator of the quality of our school district. And while we are pleased with our performance this year, we will also continue to look at other areas and other indicators in regards to the quality of the performance in Valdosta Public Schools. Just as a reminder, APR data is embargoed until November 15th. We will release our results to teachers ahead of time, probably on Friday at our faculty meeting, PD day, and then we will do a public release after the 15th. We don't yet know what our other local districts, where they scored. I know through informal conversations that we look very favorable to be the leader in the area for the second year running. So we are excited about that, and once we know, we'll share that information with you. As mentioned in the MSBA report, we are aware that we recently had a new appointment from the gentleman from Joplin to the state board. Since that time, we also have learned that Joe Driscoll has resigned from the Board of Education, State Board of Education. He will remain as our state military advocate, and remember that both of those are appointed by the governor. So we can probably figure out what's going on there, but nonetheless, Governor Grimes will now be able to make his fifth appointment, which will give him the opportunity to have appointed the majority of the state board. So we'll see what happens with our commissioner, but it's certainly looking like a change is imminent. And last but not least, we have our enrollment numbers. Valdosta Elementary, 380. Middle school, 484. High school, 358. Whiteman Elementary, 336. Attendance percentage, Nava Elementary, 95.66. Valdosta Middle School, 96.33. High school, 96.09. And Whiteman was 96.00. So the winner is, looks like, Valdosta Middle School with the highest attendance, which is awesome, again, because we have by far the largest enrollment. Nicely done. Reserve balances, October month ending. Total funds, $12,400,144. Revenues to date, $6,257,900, which is 38.4% of anticipated. And expenditures, $3,878,159, which is 23.4% of budgeted. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? KNET presentation. Come on, girl.
I've been asked to do this in place of Melissa. She could not be here, but we had nominations earlier this month and then elected first grade team as our outstanding educators for November. So, one girl, and I want to read some of the comments that were given as they were voted on, because I asked if they made comments about why they voted for this team. The first grade team at Whiteman is a very cohesive, strong team. These ladies work smarter, not harder. Kim, Sarah, and Shannon developed a lesson plan on the computer that will help them to have all the lesson tools in one place. This is brilliant. I was so blessed to be a part of this team. Way to go, ladies. The next one, Kim, Sarah, and Shannon go the extra mile to help and encourage people. They listen to you and help to solve problems. They offer and provide resources you might need to help students succeed. The first grade team is a great group of teachers to work with. At the beginning of this school year, they lost a teammate to kindergarten, which in turn increased their class sizes to 24 plus. I never heard them complain. They handled it with grace and kept a smile on their faces. These ladies rock the PLC model. Their collaborative effort focused on student data to drive instructional strategies that boost learner outcome. Collegiate level conversations transpire during PLC meetings, creating an atmosphere of trust, mutual respect, and genuine concern for all students to succeed. As a first grade interventionist the past few years, I could count on these teachers to be organized, target student needs, and supply resources to accomplish the goal. Great job.
The light was on your head.
Okay. It was trying to our side. It was. Oh, God, I got All right, I hope you did. I hope you did.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
On top of all that, you guys had a big career day today. Was that?
Yeah, that was first grade.
First grade, so nicely done. Thanks for taking care of the extra children in your class this year as well.
And nobody can retire.
Okay, consent agenda.
I need approval, a recommendation to approve the consent agenda, please.
I've got a question about the financials. I didn't see some of the reports. And I didn't know, is this where you were going to talk about concerns that I brought up last month, you said you were looking at? Or
Yes, well, I was planning on bringing up the questions that you brought up last month, with responses. And I can do that here or during the item under the budget amendment. So the questions that I recall were, is there a bus budgeted for this year? And yes, there is a bus that is included in the budget or outlay for a bus. And then the other question was the 50 or so line items that had negative expenditures out of those. And what we have in many of those cases is miscoding. We're working on correcting those, but it takes time. For instance, one teacher, if there's in one case, there was a substitute that filled in for a special education teacher who was split over 4 programs. So that's 16 codes where we had a substitute that was split and coded over all of those codes. So what that produces is a negative expenditure, and we have to go back and recode all 16 of those for that one day of subbing. That's one example that can lead to some of those issues. So we're going back through recoding. Some of them are miscoding, some of them are recoding, and a lot of those are focused in the special education department. Again, a lot of those employees in that department are split over multiple codes, so that makes it even more cumbersome to go back and correct those. But we are working on that. Unfortunately, we didn't get those the budget amendment finalized, so that won't be on the agenda for this month.
So one of my other questions were, are we anticipating more expenditures than what we have accounted for in the original budget?
Total?
I didn't know if we were on a trend line that would come to, right now they totaled around 200,000 in red. I didn't know if those were budgeted in other line items, or if that's going to trend and we, at the end of the year, will be 800,000 in red.
Right. Some of those will be, so we will increase those line items in some cases and then decrease others in some cases. So do I expect that to continue as a definitive trend? No, I don't. Can I say that we won't spend more than the original proposed budget? I can't say that at this time. It's too early to say. But we will try to get the expenditures coded and the coding corrections made so that we can start making some of those. Well, essentially, we'll have to do that in order to make the budget amendment and basically address what we just discussed with our auditor.
So it appears that it started because some of the financials in there today, there's $200,000 more in what is presented today than there was last month.
In revenues,
expenditures. So are you anticipating more than that, or? I guess I'm trying to get a feel for where you think we're gonna end up.
So I have a question.
Well, I don't know. It's too early to say. And keep in mind, 25% of our salaries occur in June, which we can project some of those, of course. But we're looking through what we do as we go through. We may have reflected those expenditures in the proper code, in the proper lines. We may not have gone back and removed those out of the improper lines yet. So we're gonna have to go through and fix that, because it's a two-part process.
I have a question in reference to that. I mean, we still have 7 months of the fiscal year left. And your question is, you're asking the superintendent to anticipate the expenditures. Do you think we're gonna go over or under? And what's confusing to me is, I feel like it's very difficult. I mean, one thing I don't seem to understand after listening to Brian is, if your revenues are extremely low, and then your expenditures are going to be extremely high on the budget, it would be easy to anticipate that stuff and say, no, it's not going to, because I've thrown out some astronomical numbers that, we probably won't ever reach. But at this point, when you ask the question, are we going to be over? The issue is we don't have a crystal ball to foresee what's going to happen in the next 7 months. And that's what concerns me. You see what I'm saying, Larry?
I understand what you're saying, but that's what a budget is.
Yes.
Anticipating what we plan on doing
Yes.
for the next
Yes.
7 months
I agree.
or 9 months salaries.
But
I
at this
think-
point, we're over in some areas, right? Into the fourth month of the fiscal year. I see what I see.
Many of which are coding issues,
Yeah.
or recoding or miscoding.
No, I don't, it's hard for me to say either way, what direction, how to solve it.
Did you want to say something?
No.
No, well, throw it out there, because it's all about, throw it out there.
No, it's an interesting, actually, I've been listening to the audio amending the budget. We kind of do the same thing. But I agree with Larry, and I take a little bit of an issue over inflated budget. That's not the budget, and that you're no longer doing it. That budget needs to be as close as possible again. With the realization that not good expenditure or dynamic nature. So they're going to be changed. And that's what creates the
With even the coding issues, though.
Yes, well, I can understand your code. Because we have some of the same problems. So we call them different things.
Right, and that's a process. I think, from what I'm understanding, it's a coding, there are coding issues, and then it's a process, and then we're just not really quite there yet. So that's why the budget is not even on our.
So part of the issue too is that the codes change themselves from the state. We weren't aware. So part of it is miscoding, part of it is recoding, and part of it is information we didn't know when we set the budget. So we're trying to change those. And I mean, I talked about some of the challenges with finding trend data, and then informed decision making is what I rely on to try to make a budget and foresee what we're going to spend. And what becomes really challenging is when the codes change, it's like going back and looking at spaghetti. I mean, there's nothing that lines out linear. I mean, there are some things, but a lot of it doesn't, and it makes it difficult. And it's only going to become more difficult when we go through yet another comprehensive recoding. And I have very little faith in the
the crosswalk actually being usable. I hope it is, but we have our concerns. When you hear that the state, when they're pressed on questions, when they say, well, hold that thought, we'll get back to you after we figure out what the answer is. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad practice, but it just indicates that they're not ready to commit, or they don't want to say, or they don't know yet. So it really comes down to when we're really talking about at the end of the day, it's decision making. Do we want to spend the money or not? Do we have to spend the money? And that comes down to 3 questions: what services for what students at what cost, and then what's our financial status of the district overall. We're trying to do a lot of things right now with our programming, with our staffing, and we are spending some money on some things that we hope will have a good ROI as we embrace open enrollment and we compete with other districts. And we can certainly take a very conservative approach, but my feeling right now is our team and our students are trending very well performance-wise, and it's a good time to say yes more often than we say no when we can. So that's kind of my mindset, but that mindset does lead to budget amendments and upward typically.
I want to make something real clear. I would rather know what we are anticipating, because I can remember back to 2013, whenever we had to cut a lot of things really quick. And I would rather see trends identified and addressed along the way than to come to the end and have to chop off $500,000, $800,000, $1 million when we turn the page on a new budget.
Right.
That's my goal, not to scrutinize every expenditure, but to identify trends and to make sure we're managing those trends in our expenditures. Right. Because the board did make decisions that cost the district more money in several areas. And so it's not unreasonable to think that our expenditures are going to be more than income, but I think it's very crucial to talk about those and to identify those so we can analyze what 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of that's going to actually do to our reserves. That is my concern, not nitpicking the individual codes.
When you refer to 2013 budget, you're referring to the school's budget. Yes, you're referring to the situations where when the superintendent said that we had to make deep cuts based on the fact that we were in the red. This was right after the school, the vote on the school buses didn't go through.
Well, it was more than that, because there was also talk of sequestration that lowered the income side also. And nobody knew it was going to rebound in a year, I don't think. So all of those things, all I'm saying is we manage that and not wait until the end of the year to say, oh, gee, we overspent what we thought we would by $800,000 or $2,000, whatever that is.
And that's what happened in 2013, and that's exactly the way the superintendent stated it, basically. If I remember, I was in a meeting.
But again, my thought is that the whole recoding and whatever, that process has to go through and filter its way out in order for us to see exactly how much that we have in those areas.
I do not disagree. All I want is an update to know where we are.
And I think that's reasonable, absolutely.
Monthly update, quarterly.
I've had this conversation. I'm not going to dictate.
Well, you provide us with that, so I don't see that as an issue.
So we hope that, we plan to have the budget amendment ready for the December meeting. And that should give us some better data on those questions.
So when you ask for that kind of information, you're basically asking for, hey, these areas of the budget, we don't, if things are under budget specific areas, that's no need to really be looked at. It's the areas that are above and beyond the budgeted amount that you could actually say are in the red, basically, because you're $200,000 over in a specific area. Those are what you want areas you want to see identified. And say, hey, listen, here it is, we are 2 months later, or 3 months into the school year, and this is where we're at in this specific area, and this is the justification or reason behind it.
That would be an example. I've expressed that I will not dictate what that looks like.
Well, that would be the simple way to do it, is say, listen,
I don't disagree, but again, we are here to make decisions off of the aggregate. And so we just need that information to make those decisions.
but to wait till the end of the year to find that information out is a little too late.
I would agree.
But then again, there's other factors in that. Just the superintendent needing to do.
Well, yeah, and I understand that. I mean, what.
Okay. Okay, any more discussion?
Just,
Go ahead.
the district is in the healthiest reserve balances that we've been in the better part of a decade right now. So it's a good time to sort this stuff out and learn and figure out our process and get things going.
Right, still need a recommendation to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a recommendation to approve the consent agenda.
All in favor? Aye. Great, new business. I need a recommendation to approve the bills as presented.
Make a recommendation to approve the bill presented.
This is for full board.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Approval of bills requiring abstentions.
Make a motion to approve the bill.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Abstentions? Recommendation to approve fiscal year's 2017 audit as presented.
My issue with this thing is we've had some repeats from the past, and the biggest one that I would like to discuss is this segregation of duties. This has been an ongoing trend now for 3 years, 4 years that I know. Katie has been our savior in the past, and we realize that, and we appreciate it with all amazing everything. Roses should be thrown in your feet. But the part that irritates me the most about this is, one, Katie is contemplating retirement. 2, we're only 1 deep in areas, and if she decides to leave, then we're screwed. And I've been asking about this for 3 years now about the segregation of these the segregation of these duties, and also on continuity folders to follow with the segregation of those duties. And here we are again, we're right back at the same finding that we're not segregating our duties and that we're relying heavily on Katie for everything. And like I said, I don't think I'm attacking you on this. It has nothing to do with you. Like I said, you do a wonderful job. It has to do with the administration. We have got to fix this. We have to fix it now. Like I said, this is, I know, of 3 to 4 years. We've had the same finding over and over and over again. We've got to fix it. And it can't be keep getting put off and put off because she's not going to be around forever. And we have nothing to fall back on. And I don't know what the answer is other than it needs fixed and we need to do that sooner than later.
Duly noted.
So as far as the approval of this audit, I'm voting no on the approval of this audit until, and I don't care what everybody else does, but
Would it make a difference if I asked Westbrook to provide the board on school districts roughly our size to smaller, how many they found where they didn't list segregation duties? Because that's not, I don't know that I've ever seen an audit where it isn't listed.
no, I don't care what other school districts do. I know what we need to do, and we've got to quit dragging this down the road.
You know, I know what Ryan from Westbrook said, it's common practice for a school our size to end up in a situation like this. And, you know, every year we have had this happen, but like you said, it reverts back to the fact that it's common practice, and they find this across the board with smaller districts.
And that's fine, what other districts want to do. She is getting close to retirement. If she retires, what are we gonna do? She knows everything.
I sure can answer that question.
Well, there you go. And that's what I've been asking for the past 3 years. What are we gonna do? And it never gets answered.
Well, I would assume that, I mean, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, people that work at an office, if someone is replacing you, you teach them their job as you leave. You don't just like leave and not teach them the job and leave everybody hanging. So, I mean,
Do we have a plan in place to?
I think that's the thing, that do we have something in place?
That's the succession plan, basically.
Yes.
If we did, I mean, the succession plan would be like any other critical employee of the district, is we would hope to have the opportunity to have a transition period where we go through training, but in an ideal situation that happens, and in some cases it won't happen. I mean, there are all kinds of unexpected things that could occur. So the only way to really accomplish that, well, we're talking about two different things here. Segregation of duties from the auditor's standpoint is basically risk management. It has little to do with continuity of business, which is, I think, more your concern.
Well, that is my concern, but the checks and balances of the segregation of duties, the answer was, well, the board reviews the bills every month, so that should take care of it. It's not, we're pushing this off and pushing it off and pushing it off on creating that segregation. And I'm not gonna bring up what we discussed last one, but this just points directly to what we had discussed.
Well, I will work on some options and bring those forward. First of which will be asking Westbrook to help us determine with current staffing loads and numbers if we're able to achieve full segregation of duties as being the most cost-effective approach. And if we can't get there, then perhaps we can, but that does not address continuity of business at all. So the only way to address continuity of business is to duplicate the position and start now with some type of succession plan based on the chance that she might retire, but that could count for a whole lot of people within the district.
Well, if the duties were distributed equally amongst the employees that you have in there, and everybody was to learn the jobs of that administrative position, then there wouldn't be an issue. But we stayed one deep on everything. And there's been times when we wanted to change that. And I voiced against it last month, and I'm voicing against it again. Because it's getting ridiculous. This has got to be changed.
Okay.
Any other comments? Still need a recommendation to approve the fiscal year's 2017 audit as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017 audit as presented.
I second it. All in favor? Aye.
No.
All opposed? One. Resignation, early notification incentive. I need a motion to approve this incentive as presented for the 2017-18 school year.
I'll make a motion to approve the resignation early notification incentive as presented.
All in favor? Aye. And the affiliate handbook draft.
That's informational first reading, right?
Absolutely, first reading.
So we don't have to have any action.
There's no action.
Take a look through that if you have any recommendations on changes. Essentially what we're trying to do, the board really has no jurisdiction over affiliates of the district and their fiscal management practices. However, the district is going to take a position to try to provide guidance to those affiliates. And this is something we can kind of pull together via web resources and just put it in front of the board for first reading.
So with this first reading, is it the board's, is the board asking moving forward that these affiliate organizations conduct a self-audit, pay for an audit? I mean, they're not going to be audited through our district by any means, but the suggestion is that these sub-organizations be audited. Is that correct?
The suggestion is that they go through some general fiscal management practices that would provide some transparency and some duplication of just basically some general protections against any potential fraud.
We're not saying that they need to be audited, but we're saying that you need to have the checks and balances in place for accountability.
Correct. For instance, they should, on every month, there should be a treasurer's report that's written and presented that shows the revenues, expenditures, and balances, just so that there's a record.
That are in line with action.
Correct.
MSBA 2017C policy updates. This is for our first reading.
The only thing I would point out on this is policies EHBC, I believe. The policy EHBC, and they're basically, they're kind of highlighting right here, for this reason, MSB strongly recommends that districts read this policy and the accompanying procedures carefully. Do not adopt or approve this material that the district will not implement. So we've had an initial discussion with Mr. Davis, our Director of Technology, and what we're currently doing as opposed to what is listed in here. As of right now, our initial position is to stay with our current policies and not adopt. This is not a requirement, and I will go ahead and have that formal recommendation with this second reading. But I did want to point that out. And essentially, that state audit that DESE came in and tried to steal information probably was a effort to cover their interest and do a checkbox that they've done an audit. But the burden in here again is if we adopt these, we're going to be creating some additional responsibility at the local level that will most definitely cause additional staffing to oversee the security. And right now we have a number of measures in place that do, we believe, adequately protect the security of our students and our staff. So kind of keep that in mind as you read through, and then again, I'll have a recommendation on that next month.
From what I read there, we just need to document what we are going to do and adopt that policy, not the boilerplate. So you plan, just to be clear, you plan on updating that policy to what we do?
We've done the first read and kind of the first healthy debate back and forth about that, but yes, we will have guidance for the board, which may very well mean revise our current policy to reflect what we will do, and probably won't stipulate what we won't do, but we will at least update that in detail.
I have one comment about policies. I had a couple complaints last month from concerned parents. We adopted a policy based on some confusion, and maybe I was wrong in not reading it properly, but it was based on sugar content of foods in the district. And these particular parents were upset about Halloween and certain times of the year when we were bringing in cupcakes, cookies, and candies and stuff for different parties and stuff. And I guess that maybe this policy we adopted didn't adversely affect these parties for these kids and stuff at certain times of the year. Because I did have some parents complain to me, I don't know if it affects the building administration as to whether or not, kids can bring, or parents can bring cupcakes and cookies and stuff like that. But I do remember adopting that policy that said, basically no sugar on school property. Is that correct? Is that why I'm getting complaints?
Yes, but we did hear those complaints, and the policy did allow for this local district discretion. And we did meet before our Halloween parties, and we collectively decided that we would provide healthy options at our parties, but we would still allow some of the more typical party foods to come in for our students. So check back with them if they weren't happy with the way their Halloween parties went. Send them to their building principal or me, and we'll see what happened. But the intent was to try to, again, reflect our practices based on that community feedback.
I believe our building principals probably ought to field some of those questions and they had answers. I'm not saying that we have to be food police, but we've got to use common sense.
Agreed.
Maybe I read that thing to benefit my own thoughts on it, I'm not sure, but From what I read on there, it was that the district is bound by anything that they sell, as the district is bound by that rule. And it wasn't, like if a little girl has a birthday and wants to bring in cupcakes.
So we were already bound by what we sell prior to that policy, and this policy took that a step forward to include anything that we serve.
Right. But if they have to be served by the district.
Served by the district or served to students during the regular school day.
Right, but if a little kid wanted to bring in cupcakes, why is that by the district?
Because it's served during the school day.
So I was reading it just to benefit me, what I'm seeing, because I was reading it as if the district doesn't provide it, then it's okay.
So,
Well, I felt like that policy was somewhat misleading after fielding phone calls and questions from these parents.
That's why you put a grade as the nose on the Frankenstein cupcake. The alternative on top of the cupcake, all right? I like it. Thank you.
Great idea.
so I'll just say that we're sitting in a very large open space in which food and other activities occur. And we walk through here and sideways every time we go through the doorway because there's a Coke machine in there. And that's not because it was so easy and convenient to get it in there. It's because the policy and rules said you can't have that in the serving area during the school day. That's why the Coke machine's in the hallway and not in here where there's plenty of space. And that kind of nonsense has been going on for a long time. So we try to do what we can to meet the intent of the law and policy and then try to blend in some common sense. And I think we've done so and been able to address those concerns. But like I said, if they continue on, send them back and we'll hear them out.
It's for the great nose, just tell me. I know, right? Call me, because I got cooperative school district annual legislative meeting.
So just for board information, we have an upcoming meeting that you're invited to attend. It's Wednesday, November 29th, middle school Inland Summit. This is our cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City general membership and legislative reception. If you would like to attend, just let us know, and we'll get you signed up. No, there's no other benefit other than just to be there and express to our senators how happy we are with the current movement of our state board of education. I think that we're on it tonight.
Then we have, for information purposes only, we have annual performance report.
So the budget amendment, I think we've already addressed. So we jumped over that one. We'll have that. I left it on there just so that we could make sure to have a chance to discuss that. And we will, again, plan to have that in before December. On the APR, there is some additional content that's been provided to the board, including our overall summary as well as supporting data. We also have a draft press release that we will go ahead and fill in once we see what our other school districts around us and our cohort, how they perform. But overall, we're very pleased with what we've done this year. Again, it's one indicator of the quality of our school district. And for the last 2 years, we've fared very favorably. Going forward, we hope to continue that. But we do recognize some areas where we need to improve. Subgroup achievement with our special needs students is one area that we're specifically targeting. And then, when you're 1 point from perfect, you've got to figure out how to get better at what we're doing in the core content areas. So we will look for that to be emailed out, and then we will discuss this in greater detail next month.
what did they do? What was the resolution of the areas that were deleted from the scoring? What did they do to?
They did a hold harmless, so it helped some districts, it hurt some, but basically whatever you scored last year is what they allow you to choose the higher of the two.
Oh.
So it was pretty fair overall.
Okay, this was put in there today.
Yeah, so item J, Missouri United School Insurance Council renewal. This is a routine renewal, but it did just come in yesterday, and I wanted to go ahead and move that in front of the board for action. Basically, I'm recommending the same policy as last year. Our liability premium is $215,056. Our umbrella for $7 million is $7,374, and our $10 million cyber is $1,600. If we compare that to last year, I want to say this has increased by about $4,000 on our overall liability and property. Our premium on our umbrella went up slightly, and then I want to say our cyber went down by $400. So overall, we're up a few $100s, and that does include our new buses in that assessment, which is part of the reason for that increase. The other reason for that is last year they gave us a 10%. It's not a rebate, it's a 10% membership credit last year. This year it was at 7%.
So there is a motion to approve this process. Payment for the 2018 insurance policy renewal. Your music is presented.
I make a motion.
All in favor? Aye. And it is your turn. It is.
Motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to RCO 610.021, 313.2.1, by roll call vote.
Larry?
second.
Aye. Thank you for coming tonight, and we will